Right, good afternoon. You were promised rock and roll before lunchtime. In fact, you're not going to get it. You've just, in fact, had it. That was the only rock and roll. You're going to get some beautiful ambient guitar music at the end of this. But this is going to be like a TED Talk in two halves. A bit of intellectual stimulation after lunch, and then a bit of music. So it's in two halves. Quick introduction. I used to be a scientist. I got over it. I spent a lot of time working on pharmaceuticals, developing them, taking them to market, human insulin, the first HIV/AIDS drug. That's my serious part of my life. Used to be a business school tutor, teaching MBAs. It stands for Much Bigger Amplifiers. Most industries now don't live in a planned, 20-year planned world. We live in a totally uncertain world. The only certainty really is in box one here, if I just point it out to you. You know, the sort of, we know where we're going, we know how to get there. Otherwise known as accountancy, right? This is the vision problem. And down here is the sort of brainstorming region where you're searching for ideas to have a better way, a better mechanism of getting there. Over here is what we call the swamp. You do not know where you're going. You don't know how to get there. That's a difficult region for leaders. We have a thing called Brexit. Have you heard of it? Does anyone know what it means? Because I don't. Our boss said Brexit means Brexit. It's a circular debate. But Trump is another wicked problem. We call it a wicked problem. Down in the region of the unknown, the disruptive world, I suppose you could call it. So we do. What do you do about it? How do you cope with uncertainty? Well, all you need to do in the tame region of the world is ask an expert or get a calculator out. If someone asks you, what is the rate of VAT? It's a simple problem. You just ask an expert or tell them the answer. Down here, you need systematic divergence and convergence, that open-ended thinking, and then that closing down thinking. And all musicians sort of have to do this. If anyone produce music on a computer here? Yeah, if you use software now, you have the opportunity of continuous divergence, don't you? You don't know when the music is finished. It's always finished when you have to release it, of course. But you have so many choices. I have some fantastic German software at home, Native Instruments, and it's got 60 gigabytes of samples. I will be dead before I've even used all of the samples. So, I see people all the time that claim to be creative never finish their work. That is not all about doing innovation. So divergent thinking, that open-ended thinking, making decisions and saying this is finished and ready for market. Over here, JFDI, it stands for just forget and do it. Correct? Just forget and do it. So sometimes leaders say that is the direction. And if people follow, that's a valid way of leading an organisation. More often, they want to have a collaborative vision. Sometimes arguments break out. So conflict is a way of resolving uncertainty over direction. Down here, improvisation and intuition are the main methods. I'm going to focus on this box 4 thinking for our sort of mini talk on music, because the best way to learn about improvisation, or a good way, is to look at how musicians improvise. In fact, all music has a score. Sometimes it's written down like classical music. Sometimes it's understood like in rock music. It's what sort of knowledge management people call tacit knowledge, where it's understood rather than written down like a procedure or an SOP. Some music has more room for improvisation, like jazz. Orchestra has rather less room for improvisation. If you have a good music band, you have an audience. If you're playing in your bedroom on your own, you probably don't have an audience. That's the simple point. It's exactly the same in business. You need things, if you want to innovate, you need to have structure as much as creativity. People think that creativity is the mother of innovation. Well, you have to have great ideas, but you have to execute them. And that requires procedure, structure, and stuff. So structure is not the enemy of creativity in business. So many entrepreneurs I know say to me, our product is at the ideas stage. A bit like the musician in the attic who's never going to finish their musical work. If you have a good business, you have clients, customers, partners, or whatever you can call them. There we have the instant music lesson. We can develop this a little bit. In the beginning, when Henry Ford made the car, it was infinite variation. You can have anyone you like as long as they're black. In that world, there were stable bureaucracies. And there are one or two people that go around the world saying, you can conduct your business like you conduct an orchestra. They don't usually use a whip to do it, but nonetheless, it's one of those things. And it's an attractive idea of what leadership can be, and perhaps an idealized view of that the leader has all the information needed, more information than all the staff put together. I don't see it anywhere now in a world where we're drowning in data rather than swimming with information. The leader actually has to let go of certainty and let people go and do the work. And strategy is often on the ground of what's happening at the interface between customers and people working with them rather than the managing director. The managing director cannot know everything. So I think orchestras are out. Not completely. If you have a structured market and everyone wants the same thing all the time, you can have an orchestra. AC/DC is an orchestra. Why am I saying AC/DC are an orchestra? Because they've written the same song over many, many years. What's that song? Highway to Hell. Anyone listen to Black Ice? It's the same song 40 years later, and we're still buying the album. It's exactly the same song. It's an orchestra. They change the keys sometime to trick you. So that's freeform jazz sounds attractive. Everyone's doing their own thing. It's like Hewlett-Packard, two men in a shed having fun, start-up company. But it's hugely expensive, and endless divergence produces music that nobody wants to hear. So it's also true that freeform jazz in business is expensive, it's exploratory R&D, it's at the edge of chaos. It may be necessary in part of your organisation, but if you want to make money out of it, the freeform jazz has to stop, and you have to get into sort of 4/4 timing and simpler structures. And simplicity, the easiest form of music, which is simple, is rock and blues. How do you improvise? Quick lesson on improvisation, it won't hurt. You have to have what business books call emotional intelligence, being a master of your own skill on the inside and paying attention. Great musicians listen to the rest of the band, bad musicians do not. Great leaders listen to their customers, partners, staff and everything. Poor leaders do not. There's a rule that in improvisation, if someone does something you didn't expect, use that strange thing they've done and follow their lead. So if you're playing jazz and someone takes you in a direction, don't fight with the direction, try and follow it and add to it. And of course, the whole thing about creativity is about bending and breaking rules. Now, we have just enough time to play a piece of live improvisation and a little more volume on the backing track. So turn it up.